use, misuse, and disuse of forms of study. Question: how can you explain the many forms in which people have attempted to teach? Since people believe in these forms, believe that they are true renditions of fact, they are enabled to reach truth through them. But is it that some are true and some are not, as the exponents of the organizations claim? If certain forms through which studies are carried out are true, are all the others false? Answer: I must have answered this question, or rather the questions in this cluster, several hundred times, both in speech and in writing, including what I have written and quoted in books. The fact that such questions continue to be asked constitutes a quite remarkable demonstration of what questioners are like. Some at least will ask questions even though they have been answered in accessible form dozens of times. But this may mean that the questions need to be answered again and again until the answers penetrate. The answers, once again, are: 1. Truth has no form. 2. The means through which people may perceive truth have forms. 3. All forms are limited. Some of the limitations are time, place, culture, language. 4. Different forms are not necessarily antagonistic for the above reasons. 5. Forms have changed through the centuries in obedience to the external world to which all forms belong. 6. When people believe that the form is more important than the truth, they will not find truth, but will stay with form. 7. Forms are vehicles and instruments cannot be called good or bad without context. 8. Forms outlive their usefulness, increase or diminish in usefulness. 9. These statements are abundantly to be found in the writings of Sufi teachers. They were written down in order to be read and remembered. They are seldom so energetically stated or so strongly maintained elsewhere, which may account for the fact that they have not been sufficiently heeded by people who have not given Sufi materials the study they deserve. The outward forms of things of the world, about which Sufis so often speak, include the forms of teaching, which must be understood in their inward meaning, as well as exercising an instrumental function. Nazir-i Khusru has truly said, "Your diver for treasure has only given you salty clay, because he has seen from you only envy. Seek the meaning from the outward like a man. Don't be like an ass, content with noise." The cat with a university degree. In February 1975, a fine ginger tomcat named Orlando was nominated in the Surrey University elections for president of the Students' Union. That the cat was a bona fide student seems evident by the fact that it has a BSc. No doubt it will go on to a higher degree. This news story could very well, in traditional times, have been originated by a Sufi, as a comment on study and the times. Potentiality and function. Question: what is the value of spiritual exercises? Answer: here is a story for you. The chess game. A certain countryman was being taught the game of chess. He was rather confused because the piece known as a castle was sometimes referred to as an elephant, sometimes as a castle, sometimes as a rook, and so on. Finally, he got the hang of the names, and the game started. Within a very few moves, his teacher took one of his castles. Picking it up in fury, the countryman ground it under his foot, saying, "Yes, you have enough names and wide-ranging moves, but in action we can see you are good for nothing." What is the value of anything? The value of spiritual exercises is to be of value to whom they can. The human interest should be to provide the right basis for the exercise, not to seek the exercise itself. The exercise is there, and the need is there. What of the state of the individual? Sadi, in The Rose Garden, says, "The sanctuary is in front and the thief is behind. If you go, you win. If you sleep, you die." If you perform spiritual exercises while still not able to distinguish them from emotional activities, you will only be adding to your emotional life. This is why they are always prescribed in authentic schools, unlike the circus system of making everyone do them in imitative cults. Perhaps one of the best ways of remembering this is to liken it to the story of the fat man who was eating an enormous meal. Someone said to him, "Aren't you on a diet?" He said, "Yes, but I have had my diet for today. This is my dinner." Conditioning can be so all-enveloping that it takes over systems which were originally flexible and specific, generalizing them out of all recognition, though unfortunately not out of popularity. This has given rise to a rather wan joke, which nevertheless has a certain minatory quality. Do you know what I am? A wandering dervish sat down beside a tousled figure at the roadside, who began to say, "I can't pray, I can't understand Sufi classics, I don't like esoteric exercises." "Then give it all up," advised the dervish. "But how can I? I am a famous Sufi teacher in these parts." Conditioning and education. Question. You seem to say that people are trained by many ordinary institutions in a manner which people call brainwashing or conditioning. But if psychologists have discovered that this is the way man is trained, what can be done about it, and what is wrong with it? Answer. There is no doubt that people are conditioned, and that what they call their opinions and beliefs are frequently not their own, but implanted by other people and institutions. Among others, the Sufi Al-Ghazali pointed this out almost 1,000 years ago. But the assumption that all human education, training and development must be done by these methods is as unnecessary as to imagine, say, that because a tomato can be force-ripened, that there is no other way for a tomato to ripen. Conditioning is necessary, but it will function only for certain purposes. Other purposes need other approaches. The Anwar-e-Suhaili says, "The world is a hill and our actions are a shout. The echo of the shout comes back to us. Even though the wall throws a long shadow, the shadow itself still runs back to the wall." Sufi learning comes through nutrition, as it were, in the sense that Tustari answered the question, "What is food?" He said, "Food is the contemplation of the living one." The community of those who have self-realization is regarded, by Ibn Arabi and others, as organic, except that this organization is far more subtle and effective than that which gave us the analogy in the first place. The secondary self stands in the way of learning, and it will be conditioned unless it is polished, another technical term, likening it to a mirror on which dust has settled, again emphasized by Ibn Arabi in his Fusus, as well as by the classical and contemporary exponents of Sufism. The search for an honest man. There always comes a time when instruction materials, which were originally employed to direct the attention of certain people towards a certain aim, are adopted as gospel, or else simplified out of all usefulness and shallowly interpreted. A possible example of the latter is the current idea of the meaning of Diogenes looking with a lamp in broad daylight for an honest man. People think that he did this to indicate how rare were honest men. In fact, this procedure can be seen as a perfectly obvious example of someone directing attention to the whole question. Not only to the rarity of honest men, but to the problem as to whether, how, and where they might be found. The ambiguity of interpretation appears only when the student does not give both interpretive explanations, equal value. Diogenes, who died in 323 BC, is known as the founder of the school called the Cynics. Their purpose was to teach that attachment to things of the world was slavery. Today's cynics are, ironically, attached to slaves of cynicism. Again, honesty as an aim must have an archetype beyond the actual dishonesty of humankind. Sadi gives this prayer: "Do to me what is worthy of thee, not that which is worthy of me." The action of teachings differs greatly from their description. Teachings must, therefore, always remain fresh and flexible, unless we are to deal in terms of the secret herb which I mentioned in Geneva. Honesty is, of course, not easy, because real honesty is exercised without difficulty when it is the manifestation of an inner reality, not when it is a duty or difficulty. But certain principles can be used to illustrate the activity of an honest man or woman. Tale of Hatim. When Hatim al-Assam of Balkh, now in Afghanistan, went to Baghdad, people surrounded him, saying, "You are a non-Arab of halting speech, yet you silence everyone." He answered, "3 things enable me to overcome my opponent. I am happy when he is right, and I am sad when he is wrong, and I try not to behave foolishly towards him." Ibn Hanbal asked Hatim what things would save humanity from the world. He said, "There are 4 things. Accept the ignorance of others and spare them yours. Spare for them from your substance, and do not expect any of theirs." The posture of honesty is not the same as its reality, as everyone knows, but how many people can tell whether they are honest, or behaving as if they were honest? A certain tale has been coined to give this important subject expression. In order to illustrate, it has been put into the mouth of 2 lunatics, which should not really make any of us feel that its equivalence could not occur among us marvelously normal people. First lunatic religionist: "God spoke to me." Second ditto: "I did no such thing." How can one method be as good as another? Question: What you have said about the same person or the same group of people being able to employ entirely different techniques to achieve the same object interests me. But how can one method be as good as another? Answer: If a house is on fire, 2 ladders may be propped against one window. Both lead to the ground. The different colours of the paint on them may obscure the fact that they are ladders. Question: But how do we know that either is a ladder? Answer: You know by learning to recognize a ladder when you see one. Question: How is that done? Answer: By familiarizing yourself with ladders. Question: And climbing ladders? Answer: While you are learning recognition, climb them as part of it. Question: But some people insist that there is only one ladder, their own. Answer: They are right, if they are only saying that to focus attention on a specific escape ladder as an instrument. If it works, it is equivalent to being the only true one. For practical purposes, it is. Question: Are they right under any other circumstances? Answer: Seldom, because if they really were right, they would teach not, "There is only this ladder," but, "Look at all these ladders. They can, or could, work. Ours, however, is applicable to you and to me." Failure to do this reveals ignorance. Remark: But they are short of time. Comment: So is everybody. Question: Are some ladders too short? Answer: Ladders are in all conditions: new, old, rotten, short, long, blue, green, weak, strong, available, in use elsewhere, and all the rest of the possibilities. Question: what should one do about all this? Answer: try to conceive that the house is on fire. If you can do so without becoming obsessed or irrational about it, particularly without becoming suggestible through dwelling on this idea, you may get out. But while you are full of hope or fear, of sentiment or desire for social activity or personal prominence, or even recognition, you will not be able to use a ladder. You may not be able to recognize one. Certainly you should be spending your energies in circles which are bound for the purpose of welcoming such tendencies. People learn by methods which correspond with the kind and extent of their aspiration. This is the constant Sufi dictum. In the Anwar-e-Suhaili it is said, "Nobody found the way to ascend until he found the step of aspiration. Seek the stage to mount to the moon. None drinks rain from a well." Equally, of course, there are many people who cannot learn something at a given time because they have some other expectation, some preoccupation, probably an emotional one. Reflect on this news item. More than 3,000 worshippers fled in near panic from the famous Church of the Blessed Mary of the Rosary at Pompeii on Saturday night when a bottle of Coca-Cola exploded.